What if the leaders we choose are not just reflections of our ideals, but of our deepest fears and unacknowledged desires? Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of our psyche we prefer to hide. Yet, when society projects its own shadow onto a leader, the darkness can ascend to power. What does it mean when the shadow governs? In the dim light of history, we find that societies often elect leaders who mirror their deepest, most unacknowledged fears and desires. This phenomenon is intimately tied to the concept of the shadow, a term coined by Carl Jung to describe the unconscious, repressed parts of our psyche. When a society faces turmoil or uncertainty, it may unconsciously project these shadow elements onto leaders who embody them, inviting these figures to rise to power. Consider the times of great upheaval, moments when a society's values are in flux and its people feel unmoored. The collective psyche craves stability and direction, yet it is often drawn to figures who reflect the very chaos and darkness they wish to escape. These leaders, consciously or not, tap into the societal shadow, speaking to the suppressed anxieties and unspoken desires of the populace. It is here, in this fertile ground, that the shadow finds its voice. The mechanisms of projection are not limited to individuals. They scale up to the societal level. Just as a person might project their insecurities onto another, a society can project its collective shadow onto a leader. This projection is a defense mechanism, a way of externalizing and confronting internal conflicts without facing them directly. But the consequences are profound. Leaders elevated in this manner often embody exaggerated traits of power, control, and charisma, which can lead to both galvanizing unity and deepening division. As we turn to examples from history, we see this pattern repeating. Leaders who rise during times of crisis often carry the weight of their society's shadow, reflecting back the fears and hopes of the people who chose them. Delving into how the shadows rise is not an anomaly, but a recurring theme in the story of human governance. Throughout history, there have been numerous instances where societies have elevated figures to positions of power who seem to embody their collective shadows. This phenomenon is not merely a matter of political strategy or economic necessity. Instead, it often reflects deeper psychological currents within the populace. When a society is gripped by anxiety or turmoil, it may unconsciously seek leaders who personify the attributes it most fears or represses. This is a projection where a community's hidden desires and fears are cast onto a leader who acts out these disowned parts of the collective psyche. Consider the rise of authoritarian figures during times of national crisis. These leaders often emerge as embodiments of strength and decisiveness, qualities that promise order amid chaos. Yet, they may also exhibit traits that resonate with the darker aspects of the human psyche: aggression, dominance, and a willingness to bypass conventional moral boundaries. Such figures can become vessels for a society's unacknowledged shadow, allowing people to vicariously live out these suppressed impulses under the guise of leadership. In ancient Rome, the populace's appetite for spectacle and power was reflected in leaders who thrived on public adulation and displays of might. Similarly, during the turbulent years of the Weimar Republic, Adolf Hitler rose to prominence by channeling the fears and resentments of a disillusioned nation. These examples illustrate how the shadow can find expression in the leaders a society chooses, revealing much about the inner life of the collective. Understanding this dynamic requires recognizing projection as a psychological mechanism. It allows individuals, and by extension, societies, to confront aspects of themselves that are too uncomfortable to acknowledge directly. In elevating a leader who mirrors these traits, a society attempts to externalize and manage its own inner conflicts. The challenge, then, is to become aware of these projections and to question the true nature of the qualities we seek in our leaders. Projection is a psychological mechanism through which individuals or groups externalize their unwanted traits, emotions, or desires onto others. This process allows them to disown parts of themselves, attributing these qualities to an outsider. In the context of society, projection can play a significant role in shaping the perception of leaders. When a society is faced with internal turmoil or collective anxiety, it often seeks a figure onto whom it can project its fears and unacknowledged desires. This figure then becomes a vessel for the collective shadow, the darker aspects of the psyche that are repressed and denied. The mechanics of projection operate subtly and pervasively. People tend to see in others what they cannot accept in themselves. This can lead to the idealization or demonization of leaders who appear to embody these projected traits. For instance, a society grappling with feelings of powerlessness might elevate a leader who exudes confidence and authority, even if those qualities mask an aggressive or authoritarian undercurrent. Conversely, a leader who mirrors the society's repressed guilt or shame might be vilified, serving as a scapegoat for the community's unresolved issues. Projection is not limited to negative traits. It can also involve the attribution of positive qualities that individuals do not recognize within themselves. In this way, leaders can become symbols of hope or redemption, embodying the aspirations and ideals of their followers. However, when the leader inevitably reveals human flaws, the disillusionment can be profound, leading to a cycle of projection and rejection. Understanding the mechanics of projection is crucial for recognizing how societies might unconsciously choose leaders who reflect their shadows. It prompts a deeper inquiry into the nature of collective consciousness and the dynamics that drive public opinion. By becoming aware of these psychological processes, communities might begin to address the underlying issues within themselves, rather than merely projecting them onto their leaders. In recent years, the election of certain leaders has sparked discussions about the collective shadow at play in modern politics. Take, for instance, the rise of a charismatic figure who seems to articulate the unspoken fears and frustrations of a nation. This leader's rhetoric often taps into deep-seated anxieties about security, identity, and economic stability. Themes that resonate with the populace feeling vulnerable in a rapidly changing world. Such a leader may present themselves as a savior, promising to restore greatness or purity, often by scapegoating certain groups or ideals. This is where the shadow's influence becomes evident. The leader embodies traits and values that the society outwardly disavows, yet secretly harbors. Through projection, these repressed elements find expression in the public sphere, allowing the collective to confront its hidden desires and fears without direct acknowledgement. A modern case in point is how some societies have elevated leaders who promise to dismantle political correctness or defy global cooperation. These leaders often portray themselves as outsiders, unbound by traditional norms, their appeal rooted in a defiance that mirrors the unacknowledged shadow traits of the populace. Traits like aggression, authoritarianism, or xenophobia. This phenomenon is not confined to any single ideology or nation. It transcends political boundaries, reflecting a universal psychological process. The leader, once in power, becomes a mirror, reflecting back the society's unresolved conflicts and unacknowledged desires. The darker the shadow, the more fervent the support, as followers see in the leader a validation of feelings they are unable to express openly. By examining this modern case, we see how the election of a shadow leader serves as both a warning and an opportunity. It highlights the need for greater self-awareness and integration, urging societies to confront and reconcile with their shadows, rather than allowing them to manifest in potentially destructive ways. The shadow's appeal lies in its uncanny ability to resonate with the unspoken parts of a collective psyche. When a society faces uncertainty, fear, or unfulfilled desires, it often seeks a figure that embodies both strength and the suppressed aspects of its identity. These leaders become vessels for the collective shadow, promising to address the anxieties that conventional figures have ignored or denied. This dynamic often bypasses rational discourse, appealing instead to a visceral sense of identification and emotional catharsis. The leader's charisma is not merely personal. It taps into the archetypal, as if awakening ancient and dormant energies within the cultural unconscious. Such leaders often speak to a nostalgic longing for a mythic past, where simplicity, power, and clarity reigned. They offer narratives that simplify complex social issues into binary oppositions: us versus them, good versus evil. This reductionist view provides comfort in its clarity, even as it sidesteps the nuanced realities of the present. The shadow's appeal is further amplified by the leader's ability to mirror the audience's projected identity, becoming a canvas for the deepest fears and desires. In this way, the leader embodies both savior and scapegoat, fulfilling a dual role that reinforces their position. The allure of the shadow is not a new phenomenon. Throughout history, figures who rise to power by embodying a society's repressed elements often do so by promising renewal through a return to perceived origins. This promise is seductive, offering a sense of belonging and purpose. Yet, it also risks entrenching divisiveness, as those who do not align with the projected shadow find themselves marginalized or vilified. The shadow's appeal is thus a double-edged sword, offering both a sense of unity and the potential for division. The consequences of electing a leader who embodies the shadow are profound and often tumultuous. When a society projects its unacknowledged fears and desires onto a figurehead, that leader gains power not through genuine virtues, but through resonance with the collective's unspoken psyche. This can lead to a governance style that emphasizes division, manipulation, and fear, often resulting in policies that reflect the darker aspects of human nature: conflict over cooperation, control over freedom, and rhetoric over reason. Such leadership can foster an environment where scapegoating becomes prevalent, as the leader exploits the fears and insecurities of the populace to maintain control. This dynamic can lead to the marginalization of groups within society, as the shadow leader channels the collective's anxieties towards convenient targets. The societal fabric becomes frayed, with trust eroded and division amplified. Moreover, the longer a shadow leader remains in power, the more entrenched these divisions become, perpetuating a cycle of fear and antagonism. The society, consumed by its own projections, can become blind to alternative solutions and paths forward, stifling innovation and progress. This stagnation is not merely political, but also cultural, as the collective psyche remains fixated on its fears, rather than aspiring toward growth and understanding. It is crucial to recognize, however, that the presence of a shadow leader also holds a mirror up to the society that chose them. It forces a confrontation with the repressed elements of the collective psyche, offering an opportunity for introspection and potentially transformation. The challenge lies in whether the society can acknowledge and integrate these shadow elements, rather than continuing to project them outward. Ultimately, the consequences of shadow leadership underscore the importance of awareness and psychological maturity in the electoral process. They remind us that the leaders we choose are often reflections of our own inner landscapes, and that true progress begins with the courage to confront our own shadows. In the realm of Jungian psychology, the shadow isn't merely a vestige of our individual psyche, but also a collective phenomenon that permeates entire societies. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow as a moral problem, one that challenges us to confront aspects of ourselves we'd rather ignore. For a society, integrating the shadow involves recognizing these collective projections and addressing them consciously, instead of allowing them to dictate our choices subconsciously. Jung believed that the process of integration starts with acknowledgement. By acknowledging the shadow, we begin to understand the fears and desires we project onto others, particularly onto leaders who mirror these elements back to us. This awareness can act as a safeguard, preventing us from being swayed by leaders who exploit our unconscious biases and fears. Integration requires dialogue, both internal and external. Internally, it involves a willingness to engage with our own darker impulses, understanding them rather than suppressing them. Externally, it demands a societal conversation, one that invites diverse voices and perspectives to the table. This dialogue fosters an environment where the shadow can be explored and understood, rather than feared and projected. Jung's wisdom emphasizes the importance of responsibility. Each member of society must take responsibility for their own shadow, recognizing that our leaders are often reflections of our collective inner world. By doing so, we can choose leaders who reflect our conscious values rather than our unconscious fears. The journey towards integration is not an easy one. It requires courage, introspection, and a willingness to embrace complexity. Yet, the rewards are profound. By integrating the shadow, a society can move towards a more authentic and compassionate expression of itself, choosing leaders who embody genuine virtues rather than distorted projections. In doing so, we not only transform our leadership, but also begin to heal the collective psyche. As we reflect on the choices societies make in elevating their leaders, we are compelled to examine not just the leaders themselves, but the collective psyche that chose them. The election of a shadow figure into leadership is not merely an external event. It is a mirror held up to the society that elected them. This reflection can be unsettling, revealing a convergence of unaddressed fears, desires, and conflicts that have long simmered beneath the surface of collective consciousness. The presence of a shadow leader often acts as a catalyst for examining these hidden aspects. It forces a society to confront questions about its values, its priorities, and its willingness to face its own contradictions. As uncomfortable as this process may be, it is also a profound opportunity for growth. By acknowledging the shadow within, a society can begin to integrate these aspects, reducing their sway over collective decision-making. Carl Jung once noted that the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. In the context of leadership, this means that both individuals and communities must engage in introspection, questioning not just who they have chosen to lead, but why they have made that choice. The process requires courage and honesty, as well as a willingness to accept the darker parts of the human experience. Ultimately, the election of a shadow leader is a call to action, an invitation for society to reflect deeply on its own identity and trajectory. It is a reminder that transformation begins with awareness. As we become more conscious of our collective shadow, we can move towards a more balanced and integrated expression of our shared values. This journey is neither easy nor swift, but it holds the promise of healing and renewal. Throughout history, the election of leaders who embody a society's shadow has often led to profound consequences, both for the individuals in power and for the societies they govern. By examining past instances, we can start to understand how these dynamics unfold. The French Revolution, for example, was steeped in ideals of liberty and equality, yet it veered into the reign of terror, a period marked by extreme violence and paranoia. Here, the collective shadow manifested through leaders who exploited fear and division. Similarly, in the early 20th century, the Weimar Republic faced economic turmoil and social unrest. This environment became fertile ground for the rise of a leader who capitalized on the populace's unacknowledged fears and prejudices. Adolf Hitler's ascent was a stark illustration of the shadow being projected onto a figure who promised to restore a sense of lost power and security. The consequences were catastrophic, revealing how powerful the shadow can become when left unchecked. These patterns are not confined to distant history. In more recent times, we have seen leaders rise to power by tapping into underlying social anxieties, offering simplistic solutions to complex problems. Such leaders often serve as mirrors to the unresolved tensions within their societies. The lessons from these historical episodes are clear. When societies fail to acknowledge and integrate their collective shadow, they risk empowering leaders who embody those very traits. Therefore, the task is not to demonize these leaders, but to recognize the psychological undercurrents that enable their rise. Only by becoming conscious of our collective fears and desires can we prevent the shadow from dictating our choices. The past serves as a reminder and a warning. It is not the leader alone who holds the power, but the collective psyche that elevates them. As we consider the path forward, we must first acknowledge the complexity of the human psyche and the societal structures that reflect it. The integration of the shadow, both individually and collectively, is not an easy task. It requires a willingness to confront the aspects of ourselves that we would rather ignore. But by doing so, we open the door to a more conscious and balanced way of being. The first step is awareness. Awareness of the shadow's presence and influence in our decisions and in the leaders we choose. By recognizing these dynamics, we can begin to question our motivations and the unseen forces that drive our political landscapes. Education plays a crucial role here. A society that fosters critical thinking and emotional intelligence is better equipped to see through the projections and manipulations that often accompany shadow leadership. Encouraging dialogue about these psychological concepts can demystify them, making them accessible tools for understanding not only personal, but also collective behavior. Jung suggested that by facing our shadow, we reclaim the energy it consumes, allowing it to fuel more constructive endeavors. This process can lead to leaders who are more reflective of society's highest aspirations rather than its fears. Moreover, as individuals, we can practice self-reflection and mindfulness to ensure that our choices are informed by the whole self, both light and dark. This practice fosters a sense of responsibility, not just for ourselves, but for the community at large. Finally, cultivating empathy and compassion allows us to see the humanity in others, reducing the likelihood of projecting our shadows onto them. The path forward is a journey of integration, a journey that acknowledges the shadow without allowing it to dominate. By doing so, we create a space for leaders who can inspire rather than divide, who can lead us not by exploiting our fears, but by helping us transcend them. In this way, we move towards a future where our choices are guided by awareness and wisdom, rather than unconscious compulsion. Before you return to the noise of the day, a small request. If this reflection gave you something to sit with, consider subscribing. It is the quietest way to keep these meditations coming. Leave a like so the work reaches others who are asking the same questions, and share it with one person who might need a moment of stillness today. Your support is what allows this channel to grow. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next silence.